I'm going to tell a story and post this story on the internet about what happened to me when I hired the law firm of Nadler Pritiken Mirabelli, specifically Shaun, Bersson, Nadler from Nadler Pritiken Mirabelli, and Enrico Mirabelli, the founding partner. Now, what you've got to realize is this is one of the largest divorce law firms in the city of Chicago, and I believe that after you listen to this story, that you're going to be convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that the owner is a sociopath who should be locked up in jail and have his license taken away. I believe that this isn't me crying wolf. This is a story that I want to share with everyone who looks at it. Basically, my objective is to send this to hopefully at some time have every lawyer that's ever had a case against this man, or every client who's ever been represented by him, view this. And then I am sure that people are going to come forward and have similar stories to tell, similar horrific stories about how this sociopath screwed other clients for financial gain. I've complained. I have filed formal complaints with the Attorney General, with the state's attorneys. Not with the Attorney General. I filed a formal complaint and have I filed a formal complaint and met with 3 investigators from the state's attorney's office in regard to the I don't know how to put it, the crooked legal practices that Enrico Mirabelli and Shaun Mirabelli utilize and have at their disposal. I don't think that it can be that when you look at what they've done, that there is any logical explanation whatsoever. The only explanation that anyone can come to is that these two men are criminals, that they methodically planned what they were going to do with me and to my case, and the only logical reason would be for extreme financial gain, millions of dollars that were involved in my marital estate. My wife and I were adopted. My ex-wife, Anne E Borkowski, Dr Anne E Borkowski, is a fertility doctor. When we met, she was introduced to me through a friend of hers, Gina Guthrie, who works for Serono. It's a fertility drug company. She thought that we'd be a good couple, and I'll get into the specifics later, but we were married. We dated for 9 months and we were married for 7 years, and in that time Anne could never get pregnant, and it was very odd to me that she couldn't get pregnant. She didn't want to get pregnant, that she was a lesbian. We went through fertility. She was rail thin and working out 3 hours a day, which basically goes against the fundamental principles of when you're trying to get pregnant. You want to gain a little bit of weight, slow down, and cut down on any type of aggressive lifestyle, so that your body has a better, there's a higher percentage chance that you can get pregnant. When she couldn't get pregnant, she came to me and said, let's adopt kids. And I thought, okay, fine, let's adopt one. And Anne filled out all these papers adopting 3 kids. In the meantime, years later, I found out that she went out and had divorce papers filed with a Sheldon Minkow. So now she's convincing me to sign papers to adopt 3 kids. And she's got Sheldon Minkow, who's already got papers literally filled out, and he's just got to plug in the date and go and file them. So we're adopting 3 kids. My friends are all going, wow, don't adopt 3 children, adopt 1. Adopt 1. Know that you two are on the same page, that you're actually happy after you have one child that you make the same decisions, that your parenting skills are complementary, because the child's the one who is affected. Especially, imagine bringing a child in from another country. We're going to bring 3 children in from another country who don't speak English, who don't know us. The first time they're going to meet us is when basically we take over. We take them out of whatever environment they're living in and bring them into our home. And then our relationship needs to be rock solid. The first time I went against this, my wife, my ex, Anne, filed charges against me and said my husband beat me. She said my husband beat me, held me down on a bed, and in a fit of rage, at point blank range, punched me repeatedly in the face. Now, there's not a mark on any of her hands. There's not a mark on her neck. There's not a mark on her face. And Enrico, my lawyer, in his infinite wisdom, or in his manipulative and crooked and premeditated plan, don't worry about it. This is going to go nowhere. I can handle the case myself. My ex, Dr. Borkowski, went out and handed a lawyer $60,000 to sue me. He said, I can handle the case myself. I said, well, there's $4 million involved in our marital estate. I should be represented by the best legal counsel money can buy, and we should hire a private investigator and go through every single statement that she ever made that was negative about me or detrimental and is detrimental to my case. We should prepare a fundamentally sound case. Don't worry about it. Well, what happened was we went through the divorce, and then he's telling us his other case is never going to go to trial. During the divorce, the judge granted us the access for our forensic accountant to get into all of the marital estate records, so that we could get a very clear and true picture of what financial, what the marital estate was valued at. Then we'd have something that was solid. We could say, here's what Robert contributed to the marital estate, and here's what Anne, and here's the money that came into the marital estate during the time that these two people were married. We repeatedly tried to get in, and then finally the judge said, we're not going to allow you in anymore. We're not going to allow the forensic accountant in. And I'm like, wow, why would a judge cut this level playing field out of, take this piece of evidence which creates a level playing field away from me? Is there money involved? The only reason a judge would do this, I would think, is because he's been paid off by somebody, or there's something that doesn't make sense, that isn't logical. Then we go into another court, and I said, Enrico, you need to subpoena every woman I've ever gone out with, that I've ever had any type of long-term relationship with. They might have comments about, does Bob scream and yell? What are Bob's flaws? And then, has Bob ever put his hand on you? Do you know of him ever putting his hand on anyone, any woman that he's ever dated, anyone in a relationship? Has he ever been violent? Which I haven't. You know, I made a statement to him. I said, I've never been unfaithful in love or friendship. I've never been unfaithful to a friend. I've never been unfaithful in a relationship, ever. So you could ask the other women I've dated. So this thing goes to court. We have no witnesses. We go through the whole trial. 5 days of trial. And then both sides rest. Enrico and Shaun are both finished. Anne's lawyer is finished. After they're finished, Anne's lawyer stands up and he says, Your Honor, I'd like to ask for punitive damages. And the judge says, yes, I'll allow you I will allow the jury to now, after both sides have rested, award punitive damages. And my lawyer gets up, he goes, I didn't even know you could ask for punitive damages after we've rested, Your Honor. If we knew at any time They had 2 years before trial to ask for punitive damage. They had the day of trial to ask for punitive damages. They had during the trial to ask for punitive damages. How could you allow the jury this borderless ability to yield a verdict with no limit against my client? So the only conclusion I could draw is that the Judge Cunningham, Enrico Mirabelli, who is the head of the law firm. Now, this is not a stupid lawyer. This is a man that brags on that he has spoken at several universities. He's the president of numerous legal organizations, and he is the owner and founder of one of the biggest divorce law firms in Chicago. And the judge still grants it. A jury comes back and gives my wife $900,000. Now, there's not a mark on her, but they are believing her crying, crazy story, and we've had no witnesses to rebut anything that she's had to say. So then here is another unexplainable course of action, both by Enrico Mirabelli, my lawyer, and his assistant, another lawyer in his firm, both working on my case. They say, we're going to file your appeal. I'm like, you need to hire an appeals lawyer, a lawyer who specializes in appeals. You're not going to you're not going to tell the appellate court what mistakes you made, nor do you even know what they are, or you wouldn't have made them. No, we can take care of this. They file an appeal, my appeal at the appellate court. And when I finally get it, and it's already filed, it says, Barbara Small, who was the court reporter for the first 2 days, she's retired. She's disappeared. This is the last case she did. She's retired. We can't find her anymore. Now, he's got this in writing to the appellate court. We can't find her. We've hired a private investigator. We've made numerous calls. So all we have is the last 3 days. And my reply to him is, the appellate court probably has thousands of cases, and they systematically go through these cases, and they throw cases out. Very first, something missing in the record. I would think that's the first reason, and they throw those cases out. He says, no, we're arguing the law, not what happened during the trial. I go, okay. So then Charles Shepard, a lawyer who's just handling some small claims cases for me, for my business, he's over at lunchtime. Imagine, he walks in at lunch at 12 o'clock, and he's got to be back in court at 2. And he gets on the phone, and in literally 5 minutes, he tracks Barbara Small down. He gets her on the phone, and her reply to me is, Mr. Skertich, I've been sending a bill for $2,000 to Nadler Pritiken Mirabelli. They keep telling me they're trying to get money from court. They're trying to get money from the client. We'll get back to you. And the thing is, it's not just Enrico. Enrico is telling her this. She spoke to 5 people in the office. She spoke to Enrico Mirabelli, the owner of the law firm, and he's telling her this. She spoke to Shaun, Bersson, another lawyer working on my case, and he's lying to her. Then she speaks to Sylvia, a secretary or somebody in the office, and she's lying. Now, why would she lie unless she's been told by people in the firm, tell this woman X? She speaks to a total of 5 people, and she takes down notes of who she's talking to. So I tell Enrico this, and he backpedals, and he's got all kinds of bullshit to try to cover his ass. And I file a formal complaint with the ARDC. It's the Attorney Regulatory Commission in Illinois. And they write him a letter, and I'm like, I don't care. So then, now that we've found this woman and we get these records, the Attorney's Regulatory Commission says, well, you do now have these records, so you have not been negatively impacted. I said, well, what about the lawyer who's lied to he's lied to his client, he's lied to the appellate court, everybody in his office is lying to his client, and everyone in his office is lying to this woman who's holding this information. You're not going to you're not going to hold this man, the head of the law firm, accountable? Hello? 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 Speaking? Where? Yeah, at 4 o'clock. Okay. Why don't you call me when you get out of work, and I'll see when I can, and I'll just come out right when you leave. All right? I would rather you be there, because if there's something I want to show you, I'd rather you're there. All right? Thank you. That's fine. Thank you. So here's this lawyer. He's lying to the appellate court. Why? He's lying to everyone in his office is lying. And I'm thinking, wow, here's this guy. What he's actually done is he has manipulated both of my cases. For what reason? And why would this? And then I start talking to other lawyers in the city. There is not a lawyer in the city who didn't say, basically give me the opinion that this guy is a sociopath. He's a scumbag. He'd sell his wife out. He cheats. He's got numerous mistresses. He cheats on his wife. He screws the help. He's a scumbag. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's been representing me for 5 years. There's $4 million involved in my case, and he's not doing anything. I'm repeatedly asking him to do things, and I'm thinking, wow, I shouldn't be asking him to do anything. Most people, when they get divorced, have very few assets to fight over. So your financial means by which to hire a private investigator, do a thorough job at all costs are not there. So some things may slip through the cracks. My wife and I had what I thought was $4 to $7 million. So here's a substantial amount of money that, okay, I'm the guy, all my friends said, I'm the guy who I've got a job and I'm making 150 grand a year, and my wife's making millions of dollars a year. So what? It's like every woman who marries a lawyer and she's out driving a Porsche and shopping and going to the salon. I married a woman. When I married her, she made 180 her first year, and then 210, and then went off in business on her own. I was faithful to her. I never left out, and basically never went out without her. And so she did well. So now there's this huge financial. There's now we look at a married couple with no children, with substantial financial assets, adopting 3 children. She's going to the adoption agency. Imagine, Anne, she's a fertility doctor. So every client that doesn't get pregnant, that can't get pregnant, has one other option, and that's adopt. So she's going to refer all of her clients to this adoption agency. So where is the adoption agency's loyalty? It's to her. So now she's going to adopt 3 kids, and she's got papers filled out to get divorced. So what she's basically doing is going, okay, I'm going to talk my husband into adopting 3 kids, and then I'm going to get rid of his ass. And if he doesn't go along with it, I've got all the ducks in order to get rid of his ass. She's being driven to, imagine this, I'm going to court, my wife's being driven to court by the Chicago Police Department. The Chicago Police Department is driving over to our house, picking my wife up in a police car with a lesbian police officer, Laura Stransky, driving her to court. They've got a bug. They've got my car bugged and a tracer on my car. They drive her to court. She shows up into court. When she gets out, she has a police officer standing there. She's got 2 bodyguards, Rick Landini, who's a convicted felon and had just gotten out of prison. He's in the mob. And another one of his flunkies, some Italian kid in his 30s that is in the mob. They're her bodyguards in court, along with the police officer, and she's playing my husband as the scariest guy in the world. I'm in fear of my life. If I don't have these bodyguards, he's going to kill me. And on the other hand, she's telling an adoption agency, my husband treats me like gold. We have a perfect relationship. We both have rock solid businesses. We have a nice house. We have all of our finances are in order, and we want to adopt 3 kids. When I found out about all this, about her having all this money, I told her I wanted a divorce, and it wasn't about the money. All I could think about was the fact that my parents have been perfect role models, and my mother has always basically purported one statement to me. She says, when you have children, you're going to have to be ready to go to the end of the line. The children come first. And I'm like, wow, my wife has never bought me a t-shirt. She's never on a Tuesday gone out and said, I'm going to buy my husband a golf trip, a sport jacket, go scuba diving, because I'm making a fortune, more money than most people ever dream about having. You see people who have this type of money, and you wonder what it's like, but believe me, money won't make you happy. So here's Anne. She's got the police in her back pocket. When we're going through the adoption process, one of the things I was worried about was, when I was younger, in my 20s, I did something stupid. I didn't rob a bank or anything, but it was a crime above $500. It was actually $600, and so it was a felony. And I probably didn't think enough of it at the time when I was younger and not thinking straight, but I go, wow, this is going to come back to bite me. I have a felony on my record, and that's a deal breaker when you're adopting kids. And she just smiled and said, don't worry about it. So we went over to the police station and we filled out papers to have both of our background checks, with these background reports from the FBI. And when we went to pick up the report, my report was spotless. And I'm like, wow, who do you know that has the authority or even the ability to erase records that are on the FBI database? But the record was cleared. She just smiled and said, oh, So now we're adopting kids, and my wife she's already demonstrated that she has connections that can basically get her what she wants at all cost. So then I go, how can, I talked to another lawyer. This is a question. This is a question for every lawyer in America. Can you, when you're going through a divorce, go into a secondary court and say, my husband's been abusive to me. I want to sue him. My wife's been a drunk and beat the kids. I want to sue her personally in a second court. It's never done. Now, I don't know whether it's allowed. That's the question. That's one of the fundamental questions I have now. It's so odd that if this did happen ever, you would have the courts. Locked down with stupid cases, because every single person in a divorce, I'd sue my wife, and my wife would sue me, and we'd have 3 cases instead of 1. We'd triple the amount of cases in the court system by doing this. How does a judge, it's got 2 young people with no kids going through a divorce, allow a woman with $5, $6, $7 million? We'll never know, because the judge just decides Mr. Skertich has no right to see these records. How does a judge, how do 3 judges, the first judge that takes the divorce case gives it to a second judge who hears the case? He says, the first judge says, give Robert $750. 5 years later, a judge gives me $750. Now, he gives me the $750, and a week later, I go to the next court where my wife is suing me, and she gets $900 grand. How do all three of these judges, all three, know exactly what's going on, allow this to happen? It's fundamentally flawed, it's highly questionable, and I think it's probably illegal. And why would they do it? And I'm thinking, okay, they do it because they're stupid. Now that's not an answer. They do it because they're crooked. Okay, that's a possibility. And what is the first motivator for everyone? It's financial gain. And who's got the money? Anne. And why is my lawyer not doing anything to protect me through the whole process? Money. If he was doing his job from the very beginning, he would have demonstrated that this isn't about money. I'm doing my job. This man is not a one-man operation. He's not one lawyer. He's not 30 years old and struggling. He's a lawyer with 40 lawyers in his office. He's 60 years old. And so he's not stupid. He purports to have Enrico Mirabelli purports to have a photographic memory. And he's doing this. Now I'm going to go through just step by step. I'm going to go through and give you probably 50 what I believe are flaws. And I'm like, my attitude is, if I think that this man has made all of these intentional decisions that benefit my wife and made no decisions that benefit me, then you have to add all those up together and say, you know what, I could see that he did this and this was stupid, and he did this, it was stupid, but he did all of these other things that benefited you. But when you look at step after step after step after step after step that Enrico Mirabelli took in my case, the only conclusion that I could come up with is that, wow, nobody could make all of these stupid decisions. A very intelligent man could try to manipulate his client if all these decisions were to benefit him. And now the lawyer on the other side is Steve Komie, who's another scumbag. Look, when you're out talking to other lawyers, ask any lawyer that knows these three guys what they think of them when it comes to integrity. I have not found one person who says anything other than that these men are scumbags. Then I went to Pat Dowd. I went to Pat Dowd from Dowd and Dowd. I'm friends with his brother. Pat's what I believe. I've always viewed Pat as a man of very high integrity, extremely knowledgeable. I'm sure that he's viewed as one of the top lawyers in his profession. And he told me that he couldn't even talk to me about my case, which tells me, and I'm just guessing, but Enrico knew that I was friends with Mike Dowd and that I knew Pat Dowd because I had mentioned Pat several times in our discussions. And the only thing I can assume is that Enrico Mirabelli discussed my case with Pat, discussed the fact that I was reporting him to the ARDC. And because of this, Pat becomes now someone that was interviewed by Enrico Mirabelli. He cannot legally talk to me. But I believe that Enrico Mirabelli actually talked to Shaun, to Pat Dowd or his firm, which prohibited Pat from ever being able to help me out in any way. I'm convinced that there are many, many other people who are victims of Enrico Mirabelli, Nadler Pritiken Mirabelli, Shaun Bersson, and if you've got 30 lawyers in a law firm and this kind of crooked behavior is taking place, it isn't a one-time, it's not a one-trick pony. They do this. They have the ability to wield these types of corrupt scenarios on their clients, and the clients never know. And after it's all done, you're just one person who's complaining in court. You have no voice. But now we've got this great thing called Facebook and the internet. And people can see these things, and they can look at them and go, okay, this happened to me, this happened to me, here's my story. And I am convinced that once this gets a little exposure and my video gets some legs on it, that we're going to have countless people coming forward telling their little scenarios about how Enrico Mirabelli, other lawyers in his law firm, his other partners, people in his firm that work for him, secretaries and paralegals, lied to them, manipulated their cases, and there's financial gain involved. You know, Enrico called me in the very beginning of my case. He said, "You got to sell your house. You got to come. There's a realtor coming over. This is the 11:30 in the afternoon, in probably July or August. There's a realtor coming over to meet you. You need to sign papers. Your house is being sold." And my attitude right then was, wow, that's completely unprofessional. I'm not signing anything. I'm not signing anything that I haven't read and that you haven't scrutinized. Have you seen these documents? He said, no, don't worry about it. The marital estate is so large, it doesn't even matter. This is going to be one more of the assets that are settled. So I signed it. This woman literally came and met me on the street. I signed away my house. Enrico Mirabelli told me the house is already sold, and that if I didn't sign it, the closing would fall through, and we would be penalized $20,000 or $30,000. And I'm realizing right at that time, this guy was already getting paid off by my ex, because that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It turns out that after I signed it, Ann went right to the bank, took out a loan for $280,000. We sold, the condo didn't sell within a week. It sold 4 months later for $835,000. And at the closing, she had to write a check for $28,000 because we owed money. She took all the equity out of the house. We owed money. He never got, you know, I said, you need to talk to the women I've dated. I said, you know, I dated this Marietta Lesage. She was a lawyer for Parliament, which is like the lawyer to the President of the United States. She's, you know, sweet and innocent and a perfect witness. Her mother was president of the Naperville school system for 23 years. Her father was a physicist that was represented the United States in the decommissioning of Chernobyl. Her parents are of the highest integrity. She's a lawyer. She's a great witness. And you can ask her. Anybody can ask her. Have you ever felt threatened by Bob? Has he ever put his hand on you? Has he ever slapped you, grabbed you, threatened you? Have you ever been afraid of this man? No. And I gave him a list of, you know, 5 or 6 women I have dated right back through high school. I'll go, you can talk to any woman that's ever dated me. I've never hit a woman in my life. Put my hands on a woman? Sure. I put my hand on my wife when I walk her down the street. I put my hand on my girlfriend, you know, when we're sitting on the couch. It doesn't mean that put my hands on her in any type of form of aggression that would make her afraid. Never. He just, you know, I should have been represented by a lawyer who represents a client who's being convicted of this type of, who has these types of accusations being made against him. He didn't get the forensic accountant. How does a judge, unless he's getting paid, make those types of judgments? I said, you know what, my wife came back to me. Here's another one. This is another key factor. I said, my wife came to me one day after we split up the first time, and she says I broke her nose and hit her, beat her up in a fit of rage. She came back to me after like a month, and she said, oh, I know what's wrong with you. I said, what's wrong with me, Ann? I kind of was laughing. She said, you have ADD. I've read every book. Now imagine this is a key factor that was never mentioned in court. Ann says, I've read every book and every periodical published on the subject. So we're not together for 2 months, and I'm living across the street in a building that I'm an office building that I'm rehabbing, because she's got an order of protection against her scary husband. And I go, wow. So here's a doctor. Here's a very, very intelligent doctor with advanced degrees who has read every book, 27 books on the subject. So she's published these books. She's published them with a credit card. She didn't pay cash for 27 books. She's ordered them on the internet. And imagine she's sitting in front of a computer for hours and days on end reading every periodical. I said, there's computer records for this. You need to bring this up in court. She denies knowing anything about ADD in court, ever reading any book, ever reading a periodical, and he's got no proof to perjure her in court. Why? Why doesn't he have these records? Why hasn't he hired a private investigator? She has the police driving her to and from court. Why hasn't he gone to the police department and asked those questions? Get the news. This is news. Does every woman who's going through a divorce get a police escort to court for 4 years? Why didn't he take any of these steps? She's got Rick Landini. He's a man of the mob. Why haven't you hired somebody to just look up his record, bring it into court, and say, why do you have somebody in the mob working for you? Who is Laura Stransky? She has my motorcycle. I got a 2001 Harley with about $35,000 into it. It's as nice as any bike in the city. She's so mad at me when this whole event starts that she has the motorcycle stolen and dismantled. The guy who steals it gets caught and he's put in prison. I said, you need to go and get a statement from this man. He doesn't do it. Then she has my Mercedes, which is leased. She goes and she pays the lease off for $32,000. It was like $1,000 a month. It was a 48-month lease, and there's 32 months left on it. She pays the lease off. Well, then the car doesn't even belong to her. So then she goes and pays the car off. Now the car belongs to her. Then she goes to Indiana